And you mentioned payroll before, you mentioned workforce development. John, in the country, we've got a pretty serious situation relative to jobs.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're really hurting badly. So give us a minute or two on what it is that you would like to champion or are currently championing in terms of job generation and development, not only for Connecticut, but for the country, John.
Well, for Connecticut and the country, 3 simple words: made in America. Reinvesting in American technology, reinvesting in American innovation, making sure that we're able to move our manufacturing base forward. I'm fortunate that I happen to represent some of the, our largest manufacturer, United
UTC.
Technologies, et cetera. And the work that we've been able to do in conjunction with them has been outstanding. And I think we're going to be very successful on the F-35. We just got additional orders for the C-17 from India. We're bringing in the Pakistani ambassador to get orders on the F-16, but also for command helicopters and M4s that are made at Colt Manufacturing. The emphasis, Jim, as you know, being here, for every single manufacturing job that we create 4 service sector jobs. So making it here in America, selling it across the nation, around the globe, is my mantra. And we've been successful at this, not only with our manufacturing base, but we have companies like Truhitch. We were at AdChem the other day in Manchester. They're a supplier to United Technologies, but we've also assisted and helped them with overseas contracting, again, emphasizing the need for us to focus on manufacturing. Manufacturing is part of the Connecticut DNA. That's who we are. We hold proportionately more patents in the United States than any other state in the Union, and that's what we call Yankee ingenuity, although being a Red Sox fan, I like to call it Red Sox ingenuity. Having said that, this is where the focus has got to be, recognizing that small businesses like AdChem and Truhitch. We just came from a small business in Bristol that deals with archiving. This is where what we found is when the big banks haven't lent out money in these very difficult times, that we have to make sure that we provide the tax incentives, that we close the loopholes that have provided an opportunity for major corporations to locate overseas and both avoid taxes, but more importantly, export our jobs overseas. We want to provide the incentive for them to continue to create jobs here in this country, sell it across the nation and around the globe.
But John, when you mentioned small business, right? I mean, and I agree with you, manufacturing jobs are the value-added jobs, not only in terms of what it throws off, but if you have help companies like Pratt & Whitney, UTC, major divisions, and other major aerospace manufacturers in the state, you're really talking about companies, and people lose sight of this, that may have anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, 5 to 10,000 subcontract suppliers.
You hit the
so the
nail right on
ripple
the head.
effect is enormous. But John, we both know that 75 to 80%, pick a number, of all jobs are thrown off by small business. What specifically are you going to be doing to help small business?
Well, what we have to do for small business is make sure, as we've passed in the House already, unfortunately the legislation is blocked over in the United States Senate, is to provide the tax incentives for small business. Tax incentives on several fronts. If businesses are struggling and trying to meet their payroll and also dealing with benefits for employees, we want to make sure that they get a tax incentive along those lines, for example, for health care. But more importantly, for investing and getting direct loans. The DuPont company that we just came from in Bristol, for example, was able to get a $3 million loan from SBA under the Recovery Act. This is what we need to do, is to make sure that we're assisting and helping out small businesses either through loan capability directly from the government that ultimately will get paid back and be advantaged, but they'll be able to expand their workforce, be able to compete in the economy, and then keep, as you know, Jim, being the former mayor of Meriden, the circular flow of goods and services in a local community is so vitally important because of the value-added nature of that. And if people are employed, if they're working long-term, then this is good for the economy. Both Rosa DeLauro and I, and I'll close with this because I think it's 2 key areas that need to be focused on. We're looking at making sure, as we project out in the future in a global economy, how do we continue to compete? I think we've got to do something along the lines that Germany has done, where you're looking, instead of laying off people in a recessionary economy like this the government then subsidizes the small business or the business that otherwise would lay off an employee to keep them there. It keeps their dignity. It keeps them with a critical mass of employees that they need. It's less expensive than having to draw down an unemployment check, and keeps the workforce there so that we can compete in the future. Second thing, create an infrastructure bank, a national infrastructure bank that is seated by the government, but that has the private sector also pooling in there, so that the great technology and ideas, those ideas that emanate from small business, whether it be in a garage, whether it be in a mezzanine level business that has come out of a university, or from an innovative sales force, like we saw with the DuPont brothers today, that you find this opportunity to make sure that there's money available where imagination, ingenuity, and entrepreneurialism meet with the seed capital necessary in order to spawn a future for jobs.
Speaking of money, John, two comments. Number one, we both know that cash is king. And one of the things that's hurting small business now is access to capital. So I'm glad to hear that whether it's underwritten by the government or it's tax credit, anything that frees up cash to help the small business will help them hire.
Couldn't agree with you more, Jim.
John, the other thing is, as our first district congressman, I was asking this to Dick Blumenthal the other day when he was here too. John, you know what? As a taxpayer, for every buck that you and I send to Washington, for every dollar that I send to Washington, I get, pick a number, John, 65, 75 cents back. I'm getting a little upset that as a taxpayer here in Connecticut, I don't know where that other 25 to 35 cents of mine is going. So when you go back there, John, what are you going to do for Connecticut residents to get our money back?
First of all, we're blessed by the fact that we're the wealthiest state in the nation per capita income. And when you have a system of income taxing, we therefore pay probably proportionately the most. But what we do as a small delegation, and remember, we have five members in the Congress and 2 senators. We scrap and fight for every single dollar that has to come back here. And I'm proud. That's why I had the ambassador of India in. We're going to have the ambassador of Pakistan in. And making sure that we're doing everything possible when it comes to the monies that are required. This past year, we approved somewhere in the neighborhood of $6.9 billion for the state of Connecticut to utilize. They only utilized, as of May of this year, about 2.9 of that money made available from the federal government. Why? Well, because the legislature was going through, and the governor were going through their own legislative problems, and they didn't want to put up the 20% or 10% that the state had to put up in order to get that federal share. And when that doesn't happen, when we're not simpatico and everybody's not moving together, then we lose out. So we have to continue to fight to make sure that we're in front of every agency. We work tirelessly to make sure that all the block grants and all the grants that are put into the federal government, that we're working hand in glove with them. We've had various secretaries. I love to bring people up here. We're going to have the Undersecretary of Labor here next week talking about vets who are looking for jobs and making sure that we're employing them. And again, getting the best bang for our dollar out of the federal government.
We've got probably about 7 or 8 minutes left. Goes by fast, John. Couple of things, couple of comments. Number one, health care.
Yeah.
The big health care bill was passed. There are 3 schools of thought, a little bit of an oversimplification. One thought is leave it alone. Another thought is leave it alone but tweak it a bit where it needs to be tweaked. And the other camp is repeal it. Okay, so I know you're not on the repeal side, so you must be on the leave it alone or tweak it a bit side.
The bill definitely has to be tweaked.
Okay, it's got to be tweaked.
Any time that you... Look, we've been trying to pass health care as a nation for over 100 years, since Theodore Roosevelt. And so it's an enormous accomplishment. And when you think of 47 million of your fellow Americans that have no health insurance coverage whatsoever, and their only access was the emergency room, which was the hidden cost of health care that's passed on to everybody else. So it was a bold initiative to make this step. You know the story. It's been tried by every president. And you know, most people think, well, Clinton came close, but actually Richard Nixon came closer than Nixon. And both Republicans, whether it was Eisenhower or Nixon, understood the importance of this, as well as President Obama. So I'm proud of the accomplishments that have no longer does someone have to worry about a pre-existing condition as eliminating you, or that pre-existing condition bankrupting you because you have no access to health care and unable to get the coverage that you need.